I took the trip because I needed to disappear. Not permanently, at least, that wasn't the plan, but enough to let the noise die down. My name had been in too many mouths lately. A messy breakup. A job resignation I didn't explain. My parents calling and me not answering. I was tired of being perceived. The forest up north had always been my escape plan. Michigan's Upper Peninsula. A vast sprawl of old-growth pines and glacial lakes, where you could hike for 3 days and not see a single soul if you did it right. I bought a second-hand backpacking setup off Craigslist, packed only the essentials, and drove until my cell service died. Then I hiked. 3 days in, I found what I was looking for: seclusion. I set up camp at the edge of a little ridgeline overlooking a nameless lake, smooth and black as ink. It was quiet in the kind of way that makes you feel small, like the trees are listening but won't speak. And for a while, it worked. My head began to clear. I'd spend the mornings filtering water and gathering firewood, then just sit and watch the lake in the afternoons. Sometimes I wrote in my journal. Other times, I just stared into the trees, thinking nothing. But by the 5th day, things started to feel off. It began with my backpack. I always hung it from a tree branch at night to keep raccoons or coyotes from getting into it. But that morning, it was on the ground. Unzipped. Nothing missing, as far as I could tell. My trail mix was untouched. Stove still in there. Lighter, too. Maybe it fell. I convinced myself the knot must have loosened somehow. But I couldn't shake the feeling of having been watched. You know how sometimes you're in a place so quiet that even your heartbeat sounds loud? That morning, as I crouched beside the pack, the silence was so thick it almost hurt my ears. Then, crack, a branch snapped, close. Not a twig. Something thicker. I stood up fast, heart punching against my ribs. Scanned the trees. Nothing. Probably a deer. That's what I told myself. But I started keeping my hatchet nearby after that. The next weird thing happened that night. I was asleep in my tent, dead asleep, when something woke me. Not a sound exactly, but more like an absence of sound. The forest has its own rhythm, even at night. Crickets, distant owls, the occasional rustle of a possum or raccoon. But that night, nothing. It was like the forest had paused. I lay there listening, barely breathing, and that's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate drag across the nylon of my tent. From one side, to the other. I didn't move. Not an inch. I just gripped my sleeping bag zipper and waited. Nothing else happened. No footsteps. No breathing. Just that one soft stroke, like someone tracing the shape of the tent with their finger. When I worked up the nerve to check, there was nothing outside. No prints. No signs of animals. The dirt around my tent was undisturbed. And yet, I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I hiked out a mile or so and left a crude marker, a stack of stones at a fork in the trail I'd made myself. It was stupid, I know, but something about knowing where I'd come from felt necessary. Like anchoring myself to reality. When I came back to camp that afternoon, 2 of the stones were gone. Not kicked over. Not scattered. Gone. There were no signs of footsteps around the trail. No broken brush. But my pile now had only 3 stones instead of 5. I stood there for a full minute, just staring at it. Waiting to feel crazy. Waiting to tell myself I'd counted wrong. But I hadn't. Still, I told myself it was wind. Gravity. Maybe animals. Anything but the alternative, that someone had found my little marker, and knew I was out here. That night, I built a bigger fire. I kept it going long after I would have normally let it die. Flames kept the shadows moving, which meant I couldn't really see if anything was out there. But it felt safer that way. Like whatever was watching, if anything was, wouldn't want to step into the light. Around midnight, I heard something again. Not close this time. Farther into the trees. But it wasn't a twig snap or rustle. It was a whistle. 3 short notes. Tuneless. Like someone trying to mimic a bird call, but getting it just slightly wrong. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I woke up to find the firewood I'd stacked had been rearranged. Not just moved, stacked. Into a small, neat pyramid about a foot high, maybe 10 feet from my tent. Perfectly symmetrical. My hatchet was embedded in the top, blade down. I hadn't touched it since the night before. I just stood there, blinking in the soft morning light, waiting for my brain to catch up. Waiting to remember that I'd done this somehow. But the firewood had been dry, ready to burn. I never would have wasted it. I took photos with my phone. No signal, of course, but something in me needed proof. Evidence that I wasn't losing it. Later that day, I hiked again. Not far, just a wide loop around my site to calm my nerves. I made a point of breaking small branches along the way, leaving subtle trail markers to guide myself back. I counted each one. 11 broken twigs, all chest height. But when I returned, there were 12. One I hadn't made. One that had been snapped recently, bark still moist, sap glistening. It was either ahead of me, or behind me. I started checking over my shoulder more after that. That evening, the silence came earlier than usual. Like the forest was expecting something. I made dinner quickly, jerky and rice boiled in creek water, then cleaned up obsessively. No food left out. No scent trails. I buried everything biodegradable in a shallow latrine 30 yards from camp. Then, as dusk thickened the trees into silhouettes, I heard the whistle again. Same 3 notes. Only this time, closer. Not right at the edge of camp. Maybe 40, 50 feet out. Enough to make my skin crawl. It sounded like someone trying so hard to sound casual. Like they were enjoying it. I grabbed my flashlight and swept the trees. Nothing. The beam caught particles of dust, falling like snow. No movement. No reflection of eyes. Just pines, and the echo of that whistle still hanging in the air like fog. Then I did something I regret. I called out. Who's out there? My voice cracked halfway through. Weak. I sounded like prey. I hated that. No response. Not right away. But maybe 2, 3 minutes later, just as I'd convinced myself it was over. I heard it again. This time, whistled backward. Same notes. Just reversed. I barely slept. I sat up all night with the fire low and my hatchet across my knees, staring at the tent wall, heart thrumming. The whistle didn't come again. But I kept thinking about the woodpile. The perfect pyramid. That blade stuck upright like a signal. This wasn't just someone messing with me. This was intentional. The next morning, I checked my gear. Everything was still there, nothing missing, but one thing was different. My journal. I kept it tucked inside my sleeping bag, zipped into the lining. I'd written in it every night since the trip started. But now, half the pages were gone. Cleanly cut. Not torn. Sliced. Like someone had opened the bag, pulled out the book, and used a razor. The remaining pages hadn't been touched. No new writing. No message. Just less of me. I didn't even notice I was crying until a drop hit the cover. I wanted to pack up and leave. That would have been the smart choice. But there's something strange that happens when you isolate yourself for too long. You start to feel like leaving means surrender. Like if you go, it wins, whatever it is. Instead, I made preparations. I rigged a tripwire of fishing line with old tin can lids tied to the ends. If anything came near my tent, I'd hear it. I also climbed a tree a few hours before sunset and left a camera trap facing camp, one of those cheap hunting cams I'd picked up secondhand. I watched the sun go down from the branches. It was almost beautiful. The world turned purple. Shadows long and cold. For a while, I let myself pretend I'd imagined it all. That maybe the journal pages were just a weird accident. That maybe someone had been here, but they were long gone now. Some deranged hiker or prankster. But then I saw the fire. Not mine. A small one. Maybe half a mile west. Just visible between the trees. Low flame. Controlled. Someone else was out here. Close enough to watch me. I stayed awake through the night again, listening. No whistles this time. No footsteps. Just the creak of old trees and the occasional flap of wings as owls stirred overhead. But at 3:13 a.m., the cans rattled. Just once. Not enough to trigger a panic, but enough to make me sit bolt upright. I grabbed my flashlight, clicked it on. And there was nothing. No movement. No shapes. Just the trembling arc of light on canvas and trees. The next morning, I checked the camera. It had one photo. Timestamp, 3:13 a.m. It showed me standing outside my own tent. Head tilted sideways. Eyes reflecting white like an animal's. But I never left the tent. At least, I don't think I did. After I saw that photo, something broke in me. I deleted it immediately. I don't know why, some mix of denial and panic. Maybe I thought if I erased it, I could erase the implication. That there was either someone out here who looked exactly like me, or that I'd left the tent without knowing. Sleepwalking, maybe. Dissociation. Trauma. I went through the list of possible explanations like flipping through flashcards, but none of them settled the bile in my stomach. Because deep down, I knew. I hadn't moved. I'd lain there, frozen, the whole night. And something outside had mimicked me. I left the camera set up, but repositioned it, this time pointed toward the trees where I'd seen the fire. I didn't hike that day. I didn't write. I didn't eat. I just stayed in camp, pacing. Every sound felt targeted. Every gust of wind was a whisper I couldn't quite hear. At one point, I looked down and realized I'd been clenching the hatchet so hard, my palm was bleeding from the handle's edge. That night, I stayed awake on purpose. No sleeping bag. No tent walls between me and the dark. I sat against a rock beside the low-burning fire, hatchet in one hand, flashlight in the other. Waiting. I don't know what time it was when I heard the voice. It didn't come from deep in the woods. It came from inside my tent. Just 3 words. Whispered. Are you awake? My heart seized. I stood, slow as I could, the fire hissing behind me. The tent zipper was still closed. It was fully collapsed, and used. I hadn't slept in it that night. Hadn't unzipped it. I took one step closer. And then the zipper started to move. I ran. I won't pretend I stood my ground. I bolted into the woods, crashing through branches, half-blind, hatchet slapping against my thigh. I didn't stop until my lungs screamed. I turned in a circle, trying to recognize anything. Trees. Rocks. Stars. But everything looked unfamiliar, as if the forest had shifted in my absence. I tried to retrace my steps, but no path looked right. No broken twigs. No markings. Just endless pines stretching in every direction, identical and watching. That's when I saw it. A figure. Maybe 50 yards ahead, back turned. It was me. Same hoodie. Same jeans. Same torn pack. It stood completely still. Unmoving. Unnatural. And then it did something I'll never forget. It tilted its head backward, like it was bending without turning, until its face, my face, was looking at me upside down. Mouth slack. Eyes wide. Pupils gone. It didn't smile. It didn't blink. It just looked. I woke up in daylight. Curled on the forest floor, dirt packed under my nails, face crusted with dried blood from a shallow scrape I don't remember getting. I had no idea how long I'd been out. It took me hours to find camp again. But when I did, everything was different. The tent was gone. Not collapsed. Not moved. Gone. In its place was a circle of ash, maybe 4 feet wide, perfectly round. Blackened at the edges. Like something had burned itself cleanly out of the earth. My backpack had been unpacked and repacked, wrong. Clothes folded. Food sorted. Journal placed carefully on top. Pages still missing. And worst of all, the camera. It had new photos. All taken in rapid succession. First frame, a figure entering camp from the tree line. Me, but not me. No hatchet. No flashlight. Empty hands. Posture too stiff. Second frame, the same figure crouching by the fire pit, watching the real me sleep on the ground nearby. My face visible. Eyes shut. Vulnerable. Third frame, a photo of the forest. No figure. No person. Just the trees. And beneath it, scribbled in charcoal on the camera casing itself, were 4 words. You are almost ready. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't plan to. I sat with my back to a tree and tried to remember every moment I'd been out here. What I'd eaten. What I'd seen. What I'd forgotten. But the memories weren't sticking. They slipped through me like smoke. I couldn't remember what day I left the car. I couldn't remember my last phone call before coming here. I couldn't remember my mother's name. That terrified me more than anything else. I whispered it to myself, over and over, trying to dig it back up from wherever it had gone. But it just echoed hollow. And from the trees, I heard it again. The whistle. Not tuneless this time. It had melody. And it was mine. I ran again. This time, I didn't stop to think. I didn't grab my gear. I just ran. Toward the lake. Toward the ridge where it all started. Toward anything that looked like an edge to this nightmare. I don't know how long I moved. Time became irrelevant. The sun hung low and red behind the trees like it didn't want to rise or set. I kept expecting to hit familiar ground, my old trail, the first fire pit, the forked tree I'd marked with stones. But there was nothing. No sign I had ever been here. Eventually I collapsed near a dry creek bed. My legs gave out. My throat was raw. I stared at the ground for a long time before I noticed something strange. There were tracks. Bare footprints. Human. Not mine. Too small. Too many. They looped and twisted around the rocks, like someone had walked in circles over and over until the soil itself remembered. At the center of the spiral was a small object half buried in dirt. I dug it out. It was my phone. Dead. Cracked. Covered in mud. I hadn't seen it in 3 days. I didn't even remember dropping it. But beneath the shattered screen was something drawn in the foggy glass, etched by a finger, a crude smiley face. No eyes. Just the mouth. A long, black crescent. I threw it. And that's when I heard the voices. They didn't come from one direction. They surrounded me. Whispering my name. Sometimes with affection. Sometimes with hunger. Chris, drawn out like breath on a mirror. Some were my own voice. Some were hers. My ex. Tara. I hadn't thought about her in days. Or maybe I had, but couldn't hold on to the memory long enough to feel it. The voices layered over each other, rising, overlapping, until they weren't words anymore. Just pressure. Just sound. I fell to my knees. And the forest bent. Not like a metaphor. I mean the trees physically bent inward, toward me. Creaking. Bowing. Their trunks groaning under some invisible force, like the woods were folding into a funnel and I was at the center. Then silence. And a clearing that hadn't been there a moment ago. A perfect circle. Charred earth. Black spirals burned into the ground. In the middle, my tent. Fully reassembled. Zipped shut. Clean. Like nothing had ever touched it. There was no wind. No sound. Even the birds were gone. I stepped toward it. 1 foot. Then another. Then I heard something inside. Breathing. I didn't want to open it. But I knew I would. I crouched, every muscle tight, fingers hovering over the zipper. Then, slow and shaking, I opened the flap. And saw myself. Curled inside the sleeping bag. Eyes open. Staring straight at me. He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just watched. Then he smiled. A slow, awful grin that stretched wider than it should have. Teeth too uniform. Too white. And he said, in my voice, "You're ready now." I stumbled backward. He didn't move. Just watched me scramble away like an animal. Then, darkness. Total, immediate, unnatural dark. Like someone had flipped the world off. I couldn't see my hands. Couldn't hear the forest. Just a weightless, suffocating void. And in it, I felt things move. Around me. Through me. Then I heard the camera click. Once. Twice. Then a voice in the black. Say goodbye. When I woke up, it was morning. Bright. Warm. Birds chirping. I was back by the lake. Right where I'd started. The campfire was out. My gear was neatly packed. No signs of ash. No spiral. No tent. Just the woods. Just peace. Too much peace. I stood slowly, wary of the silence beneath the sound. It felt staged. Like someone had hit play on a soundscape app and was waiting for me to notice the loop. I opened my backpack. Inside was my journal. All pages intact. All in my handwriting. But I didn't remember writing the last entry. It read, Day 12. I think I'm ready to let go now. The woods have been good to me. I finally understand what I was supposed to learn. There's no need to go back. Not when I've already left. And under it, drawn in pencil, was the same smiley face. No eyes. Just the mouth. They found me 2 days later. Or at least, that's what they said. A search and rescue crew spotted the remains of a fire from a chopper and hiked in. They said I was just sitting there, cross-legged by the lake, staring at the water. Calm. Sunburned. Dehydrated. But alive. I don't remember any of it. They asked me questions. What day did you get lost? What was the last trail you took? Why did you take all your clothes off? That last one caught me off guard. I didn't remember that either. But apparently, when they found me, I had folded everything into a neat pile beside the fire pit. Even my boots. Perfectly clean. I had no answers. They thought it was exposure. Or trauma. Or a fugue state brought on by stress. One of the younger medics said I was lucky. That most people don't make it out of those woods after vanishing for that long. Most people aren't found at all. I've been back in the city for 3 weeks now. I sleep, but I don't dream. Or if I do, I don't wake up from them. I just shift from one version of the world to another. My journal's here with me. I keep reading that last entry, over and over. Trying to convince myself I didn't write it. But the handwriting is mine. The syntax. The little crooked way I cross my T's. It's all me. But I don't remember writing those words. I don't believe them. And still, sometimes I think maybe I do. Maybe a part of me meant it. Maybe something in that forest reached into me and pulled out the part that wanted to stay. Not because it was safe, but because it was free. Last night, I heard the whistle again. Same 3 notes. Just outside my apartment window. I live on the 4th floor. I didn't go to the glass. I didn't look. But in the morning, on the fire escape, I found a pile of stones. 5 of them. Stacked neatly. Like a marker on a trail I don't remember walking. Some days I feel normal. I go for walks. I check my email. I call my sister. But other days I catch my reflection doing something wrong. Not moving out of sync. Not blinking weird. Just staring. Too still. Too patient. Like it's waiting for me to look away. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I look back. I've started to forget things again. Tiny things, at first. The name of my elementary school. The smell of my father's cologne. Then bigger things. Like why I went into the forest in the first place. I tell people it was for peace. For solitude. But if I'm honest, I don't remember choosing the forest at all. It feels like it chose me. Like it sent something out ahead of it. A shadow wearing my shape. Something that could walk like me. Speak like me. Smile like me. So that when I finally came back, no one would know the difference. If you're watching this, if you're hearing my voice, don't go looking for silence. Don't chase it into the trees. Because it will find you. And when it does, it won't take your life. It will take your outline. And leave you behind to fade. Just like me.